coming to you from Corvallis, Oregon in the bountiful Willamette Valley. Welcome to my show, Valley Views, a forum for sharing relevant topics relating to people and issues in the Willamette region. Hi folks, welcome to the show. I'm here today with Corvallis High School student Grace Knutson, who was one of the organizers of the March for Our Lives Corvallis, which took place here on Saturday, March 24th. Grace is going to tell us all about the march and what led to the organization of that march and what the plans are for the next steps. Hi Grace, and welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, thanks for being here. Okay, well, will you want to give the listeners just a little preview about what the March Against Violence was all about?
All right, so after the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, the Parkland survivors of that shooting began this movement that was called March for Our Lives, and that included this march. That was the very first step in this movement. And so we followed these students' lead in organizing a march that would bring together our community against gun violence, both in schools and in everyday life.
Right, makes sense, makes sense. And do you have a few maybe personal stories or what might have been said in your school about why were people motivated? I mean, the shootings, granted, they're happening around the country, but this last, the one on the Valentine's Day was in Florida. That seems far away, but it seemed to be the last straw for a lot of people. Can you speak about that a little bit?
It was. So, like you said, these shootings have happened all over the country, including Umpqua Community College in 2015, Thurston High School in the 90s. So that has kind of brought this shooting epidemic closer to home for people in Corvallis.
Absolutely.
And you're right, the February 14th shooting was the last straw because students were finally deciding, you know what, if no one else is going to say anything, we'll say something.
Good job.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Kind of remind me of things that happened in the late 60s.
Exactly.
Like deja vu.
For me, personally, that has been an inspiration.
Now, okay, I'm just going to take a little segue. Now, how has that been an inspiration for you, someone who was not even born at that time?
Yeah, I was definitely not born. Just through my history classes, as I've been growing up, I've been really enthralled by this idea of just taking a stand for something you believe in. And so when this movement began, I found myself talking to even CHS alumni, my high school alumni from the 60s.
Yes.
And talking to some relatives that had also been a part of that movement. And just their stories and what they did inspired me to kind of take part in this movement.
Nice. Okay, good to know that was not all for naught. Some legacy left there. Okay, so can you talk with me about a little bit how this all rolled out? You know, so ideas are percolating in your high school. How did you start to get organized or things start to gel?
So I think that the first step was me personally looking for a march to go to. It was one night, late February, going through the internet, and I realized, wow, there's not a march in Corvallis. Corvallis is a town that likes to march, so I expected there to be one, and there wasn't.
Okay.
So I kind of had this spur-of-the-moment decision saying, you know what, if there's not one here, and it's something I care about, I will create the march. And after that, I texted my friends saying, hey, we need to talk tomorrow at school. And so that morning, we talked about the march. We started to set up both the National School Walkout and put together some ideas saying, okay, we'll meet it on Saturday to talk more about this. And we contacted some local community members who were able to help us out, and it kind of just had this snowball effect.
That's beautiful, yeah. And I love that. I mean, and Grace, I have to tell you, you know, as someone who's lived in this world for a little bit, sometimes it's just like that. There's nothing going on. You have to do it yourself. You have to create it yourself, and then, you know, hopefully people will come, and they did. They did this.
Definitely
They definitely did. Yeah. So let's talk about then what it looked like that day, because people did come. So describe what it was like for you that day. I mean, I saw you buzzing around. I mean, my husband Max and I were out there at tables, but, you know, it was not, let's make it clear, this was student-led. I mean, there were adults there pitching in, but this was student-led. So what were your feelings that day?
All right, so we being my family, some student organizers, and then different adult volunteers who were able to help with crosswalk monitoring. They were all there at about 7 o'clock,
Yep.
and we all set up. And from there, at about 9:40, not a whole lot of people had come yet. And so I was like, oh my goodness. So, see, I thought that there would be so much more people.
Yeah.
So I went to the little student organizer tent, talked to some of my friends and co-organizers, and I walked back out. And all of a sudden, there were just hundreds and hundreds of people.
I saw that happen.
Hopped back
Yeah.
up on the stage, and I just like couldn't see the end of the crowd, and it was absolutely amazing.
Isn't that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was wonderful. And it is funny how sometimes that does happen. There's that horrible moment when you think, oh, no one's showing up at all. And then
Exactly.
just at a turn of a dime, there they are. So, yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
And we even had people coming from the back saying to our sound people, saying, we can't hear you in the back. And we told them, I'm so sorry. We just don't have the equipment to reach that far because we didn't know that so many people would show up.
Right. And in Corvallis, there were estimated at maybe 3,500, maybe hitting
Yeah.
4,000 people showed.
Yeah, we had some
Yeah.
head counts. That every head count we had was about 3,000 to 4,000.
Yeah. Well, what was it like? There were 9 speakers, and I know hard to coordinate that stuff. So how did you manage it?
Well, first of all, I talked to the organizers of the national walkouts because each
Okay.
of the walkouts in high schools in this area had speakers in terms of just talking about this is what our movement is, this is what you need to do, you need to vote, all of those things.
Absolutely.
So I talked to Julia Keon, who was one of the local organizers. The other wasn't at CHS. She was gone that weekend.
Okay.
So I organized those high school speakers, and then from there I talked to some like parents at middle school level saying, you know, hey, if you know of any students or talk to the teachers and people they thought would be good or people who had already put together some thoughts just for their
Right.
own,
Yeah, so, so you're seeking out, you're kind of sort of beating the bushes a little bit or just doing
Yeah.
some intelligence work to see who's has some concepts maybe down on paper.
Exactly.
And then I heard that you did review all the speeches beforehand.
Yeah, the night before March 23rd, we had a community poster making night.
That's right.
And I think you were there.
Yeah, yes. Uh-huh.
So after that, we had a local community member come in. She helped with the Women's March, and she helped with the March for Science. And so she just listened to each speech or poem or song and said, you know what, that was amazing.
Yes.
Why don't you try emphasizing these words or like kind of quieting down and then projecting your voice a little louder.
Nice. Okay, well, that certainly showed during the day of the march because the speeches were so incredible and empowering. And I don't, I hear the word incredible a lot these days. I don't use it that much, but I'm using it now. It was really incredible,
Yeah.
well thought out, and the delivery, and it's hard to keep people on task too. Sometimes when you have multiple speakers, maybe they go over or way too long, and then suddenly you're late on your agenda. But this was like it moved along. It was really moving along. So
Yeah.
never missed the theme. Yeah,
Yeah.
or the moment. So I guess I will ask you too, maybe are there any particular things you learned from this experience or would do differently or
From this march in particular and just organizing with local community members and students, communication is absolutely key. Making sure you are reaching out, following up after meetings,
yes
and just being in contact pretty much all the time with the people you're working with.
it's hard work.
It is. It definitely is. And I'd say the other thing I learned is although organizing something like this is a lot of work, just keep the actual mission close to your heart because that's what you're working for.
Yeah, these are all good points. Hey, adult listeners out there who are organizers, listen to this young woman because she's got it down. You know,
Thank you.
she's got it going on here. Now, I guess, I also heard that funds were raised. I mean, this just didn't happen for free, so there was some serious fundraising that happened.
Yes, we raised over $3,000 from the local community through GoFundMe.
Uh-huh.
And I also wrote and received a grant through Everytown for Gun Safety for $5,000.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that organization?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Everytown for Gun Safety works with organizations like Students Demand Action or Moms Demand Action to work for gun safety. So
Uh-huh.
they've really supported the March for Our Lives movement. And they were giving out, that's a relative term, they weren't
Right.
just giving out the money.
Right. Yeah.
But they were giving
Apply.
out $5,000 grants to marches around the country, and we were lucky to receive
That's
one.
beautiful. So you had to propose something. I mean, you had to
Yes.
write something.
I
and-
wrote
yeah.
about our mission, what we had planned, and like how many people we expected. So
Nice. That's a quick turnaround too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround. Well, I will ask you now in the last minutes that we have, are there any next steps, either that you're tracking on a national level or a local level? What happens now?
we are definitely paying attention to the national leaders of this movement out of Florida. However, on a local level, we have a walkout of school on April 20th that
Ah.
it's the anniversary of the Columbine shooting.
Oh, yes.
So on that day, at a high school and student level, we will be registering voters, educating students on what they can do, how to reach out to your representatives and different legislators. So we are giving them, these are the addresses, this is the kind of stuff you can talk about, just like tell them what you want to see them do.
Right.
And that is what we are planning on a pretty short-term level. Long-term, we might go to the farmer's market and set up a booth.
Excellent, yeah. That's a great location. Lots of folks there.
Exactly.
Yes, and that's coming right up. Yes, yes. Okay, well, I think we're pretty much at the end of our time here. Would there be any words of inspiration you might have to other people out there who are concerned about gun violence?
I would say make your voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
We are the voice not only of a generation, but of a national society that really cares about this topic.
Yes.
And if we keep showing that, we will change legislation and we will shine the light.
Very good. Oh, great note to end on here. Well, thank you so much, Grace, for being here. I'm very honored to have you here, and keep up the good work.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right. Take care. You've been listening to Valley Views. I'm your host, Dale Holliday, and I'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, ideas for future topics, or other matters you would like explored. Email me at valleyviews@kboo.org. That's VALLEYVIEWS@kboo.org. Special thanks to Chad Howard from Corvallis Access Media for his technical assistance and support. I look forward to being with you again next time. And remember, as Doctor Who once said, I'm not in charge, but I'm full of ideas. Bye!